Everyone says rifle design hit its peak the moment polymer stocks and factory optics showed up, and that anything older belongs behind glass. That sounds good until you actually start shooting instead of shopping. Spend time on the range with rifles that were built when failure meant losing a fight, not a warranty claim, and the modern hype starts to crack. These rifles weren't designed to look good on a website. They were built to hit targets with iron sights, in bad weather, under stress, with ammunition that had to work every time. This isn't about nostalgia or collecting, it's about old rifles that still shoot harder, straighter, and more honestly than many modern guns that cost 5 times as much. Mosin Nagant M39 sits at number 15, and it exists as proof that Finland understood accuracy, discipline, and practical rifle design better than almost anyone forced to work with limited resources. This is not the rough, loose-fitting Mosin most shooters picture when they hear the name. The M39 was the final and best refinement of the Mosin platform, rebuilt by Finnish armorers who were obsessed with consistency and battlefield performance. These rifles were assembled using carefully selected receivers, fitted with heavy-profile barrels, and rejected outright if they failed accuracy inspections. The result is a rifle that feels solid, deliberate, and purpose-built the moment you shoulder it. Overall length comes in at roughly 46.8 inches, with a barrel just under 27 inches, giving the 7.62 by 54R cartridge plenty of room to build velocity and maintain stable ballistics at distance. Unloaded weight is usually around 5 to 10 pounds, which sounds heavy on paper, but translates directly into controllability and confidence when firing full-power ammunition. That mass, combined with a thick barrel and excellent stock geometry, helps the rifle track smoothly through recoil and settle quickly back on target. The iron sights are a major upgrade over earlier Mosin designs, featuring a sturdy front post and a more refined rear sight that allows precise elevation adjustments and a clear sight picture even in poor light. Finnish stocks are typically made from Arctic birch, shaped for durability and ergonomics rather than appearance, and they hold up exceptionally well to temperature changes and hard use. Mechanically, the action is still the classic Mosin bolt, simple and strong, but when properly fitted and head-spaced, it runs smoother than most people expect. Accuracy is where the M39 separates itself completely from standard Mosins, with many examples capable of producing tight groups that rival modern budget hunting rifles using surplus ammunition. With quality ammunition, sub-2 MOA performance is common, and some rifles do even better. The cartridge delivers serious downrange energy, making the M39 effective for both long-range target shooting and large game hunting, where legal. There are drawbacks, and they are worth acknowledging. The rifle is long, heavy, and slow to maneuver in tight spaces, and the bolt throw is not as fast or refined as later Western designs. Ammunition availability can fluctuate, and surplus prices are no longer what they once were. Even so, current market prices for shooter-grade M39 rifles often fall in the range of $600 to $900 depending on condition and markings, which is still a bargain considering the build quality and performance on offer. What you get in return is a rifle that was designed to win fights in extreme conditions, built by craftsmen who cared more about hits on target than production speed. The Mosin Nagant M39 does not try to impress you with innovation or comfort. It earns respect through results, and that makes it one of the most honest and capable surplus rifles still available today. Swedish Mauser M/96 is a rifle that immediately feels less like a mass-issued infantry weapon and more like a carefully tuned precision instrument, the kind of gun that reflects a national obsession with marksmanship rather than battlefield expediency. Adopted in 1896 and produced to extremely high standards, the M/96 is a full-length bolt-action rifle measuring roughly 49.5 inches overall, with a long 29.1-inch barrel designed to extract maximum consistency and velocity from the 5x55 cartridge. That cartridge is central to the rifle's reputation, launching long, high sectional density bullets with mild recoil, excellent penetration, and a flat, predictable trajectory that rewards disciplined shooting at distance. The small ring Mauser action is often underestimated on paper, but in practice it is exceptionally smooth, with bolt travel that feels polished rather than merely functional, a result of precise machining and careful heat treatment. The iron sights are another standout feature, offering a long sight radius and a finely graduated rear ladder that encourages deliberate, repeatable sight alignment instead of fast, careless fire. Unloaded weight sits around 9 pounds, which feels heavy by modern standards, but contributes directly to stability, recoil control, and a calm shooting impulse that keeps the rifle settled through the shot. The stock, usually walnut or beech, is slim through the wrist and shaped for prone and supported firing positions, reflecting the way these rifles were actually intended to be used by trained marksmen. One of the M96's greatest strengths is how well it has survived time. Sweden maintained these rifles meticulously, and many spent decades in armories or civilian shooting programs rather than corrosive battlefield environments, meaning bores are often bright and mechanical, whereas minimal even after more than a century. On the range, that care shows, with many examples capable of producing accuracy that rivals or exceeds modern entry-level bolt-action rifles, even when fired with surplus-style ammunition and iron sights. The drawbacks are real but understandable. The long length makes it less handy in tight spaces, and mounting modern optics usually requires permanent modification that runs against the rifle's character and value. Ammunition is less common than mainstream modern cartridges, but it remains available and well suited for both target shooting and hunting. Current market prices typically fall between $600 and $900, depending on condition, matching numbers, and manufacturer, placing the M/96 directly against modern budget rifles that often rely on lightweight materials and optics to achieve acceptable performance. The Swedish Mauser M/96 does not need those shortcuts. It stands as proof that careful machining, intelligent cartridge selection, and a culture that valued accuracy above all else can produce a rifle that remains relevant, effective, and deeply satisfying to shoot long after trends and technologies have moved on. M1. Garand is the rifle that permanently reset expectations for what an infantry weapon could do, and even today it still feels more serious and purpose-built than many modern rifles chasing trends. Adopted by the United States before World War II, the Garand fires the full-power 30-06 Springfield cartridge and feeds from an 8-round on-block clip that ejects automatically when empty, a system that looks strange to modern eyes but proved brutally reliable in combat. The rifle measures roughly 43.5 inches overall, with a 24-inch barrel, and weighs about 9.5 pounds unloaded, numbers that sound heavy on paper but makes sense the moment you shoot it. That mass, combined with the long gas-operated system and operating rod design, keeps recoil smooth and controllable while allowing fast, accurate follow-up shots that bolt-action rifles simply cannot match. Where a bolt gun forces you to break position, cycle, and reacquire the sights, the Garand lets a trained shooter stay locked in and keep pressure on the target, which was a massive tactical advantage at the time. Accuracy is another area where the rifle continues to surprise people who assume early semi-autos were crude. With a good barrel and proper ammunition, many Garands will comfortably hold groups that rival modern hunting rifles inside practical distances, helped by one of the best iron sight systems ever put on a service rifle. The rear aperture is strong, precise, and easy to adjust, while the front post is clean and forgiving under stress, making the rifle feel intuitive even for shooters who are not iron sight specialists. Ergonomically, the Garand is honest and utilitarian, with a solid walnut stock, a straight comb that aligns naturally with the sights, and controls designed to be used with gloves, cold hands, or adrenaline in the system. Its strengths are clear: real stopping power, excellent reliability, fast sustained fire, and a level of mechanical confidence that comes from a design built for war rather than the showroom. The downsides are just as real. It is long by modern standards, heavy compared to lightweight carbines, and not friendly to optics without modification. Ammunition selection matters because the gas system was tuned around specific pressure curves, and the fixed 8-round capacity cannot compete with detachable magazine designs for sheer volume of fire. Even so, those compromises are part of a rifle that does exactly what it was designed to do and does it exceptionally well. On today's market, shooter-grade examples typically sit in the mid-hundreds to low thousands depending on condition and source, putting the Garand in a unique position where it costs more than many surplus bolt guns, but still undercuts modern rifles that offer less character and no proven history. What keeps the M1 Garand relevant is not nostalgia, but confidence. It shoots with authority, rewards good fundamentals, and reminds anyone behind the trigger why it earned its reputation as one of the most important and effective service rifles ever issued. Steyr M95 is one of those rifles that immediately tells you it comes from a completely different era of thinking, an era where speed and battlefield function mattered more than comfort, ergonomics, or long-term shooter fatigue. Designed by Ferdinand Mannlicher and adopted by the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the years leading up to World War I, the M95 uses a straight-pull bolt action system that still feels unconventional even today. Instead of lifting and rotating a bolt handle, the shooter pulls straight back and drives it forward again, allowing extremely fast follow-up shots, while keeping the rifle shouldered and the sights on target. In its most commonly encountered surplus configuration, the rifle is chambered in 8x56R, a powerful full-size military cartridge that delivers significant recoil but also serious downrange energy and penetration. Most surplus examples are the carbine length variants, with an overall length of roughly 40 inches and a barrel length around 19 inches, making it relatively compact for a full-power service rifle while still retaining excellent ballistic performance. The action itself is mechanically fascinating, using a rotating bolt head actuated by an internal cam track, which provides strong lockup and smooth operation when properly maintained. Feeding is handled through a fixed internal magazine loaded by en-bloc clips that eject automatically after the last round is fired, a system that keeps reloads fast and simple, but also limits flexibility compared to detachable magazines. The sights are rugged and utilitarian, optimized for combat use rather than precision competition, with a simple rear sight, graduated for distance, and a protected front post that holds 0 even under abuse. Accuracy is respectable rather than match grade, but entirely adequate for the rifle's original purpose, and many examples still group surprisingly well, considering their age and the power of the cartridge. Where the Steyr M95 truly stands out is durability. The receiver and bolt are massively built, designed to function in mud, cold, and neglect, and many rifles still cycle smoothly more than a century after they were manufactured. The downside is recoil, which is sharp and unforgiving, especially with original spec ammunition, and the straight stock design does little to soften the impulse, making extended range sessions physically demanding. Ergonomics are unmistakably early 20th century, with a short length of pull and minimal concessions to shooter comfort. And ammunition availability can be more limited compared to more common surplus calibers, though modern commercial loads and converted examples do exist. Despite these drawbacks, the rifle offers something few modern designs can replicate: a unique combination of speed, mechanical ingenuity, and brute force reliability. Today, shooter-grade Steyr M95 rifles typically sell in the $350 to $600 range depending on condition and conversion history, making them one of the most affordable ways to experience a true straight-pull military rifle. It is not gentle, it is not refined, and it makes no attempt to be forgiving, but the Steyr M95 remains a powerful reminder that function-driven design, when executed well, can stay relevant long after trends and technologies change. The Argentine Mauser model, 1909, is often spoken about in quiet, confident tones by people who have actually spent time behind one, because this rifle represents what happens when a country demands top-tier quality and is willing to pay for it. Manufactured to German standards using Mauser Oberndorf tooling, the Model 1909 was built as a full-length service rifle with an overall length just over 49 inches and a long 29-inch barrel that gives the 65x53 cartridge excellent velocity, consistency, and smooth recoil impulse. That long sight radius alone makes a noticeable difference when shooting irons, especially compared to shorter modern rifles that rely heavily on optics to make up for design compromises. The action is a true large-ring Mauser 98, featuring controlled round feed, a massive claw extractor, dual front locking lugs with a third safety lug, and a bolt that cams smoothly with authority rather than speed. The rifle feeds from a 5-round internal magazine loaded via stripper clips, and everything about the feeding cycle feels deliberate and secure, even by modern standards. The 7.65 by 53 cartridge itself sits in a sweet spot, producing flatter trajectories and less felt recoil than 8mm Mauser, while still delivering excellent penetration and downrange energy, making the rifle surprisingly pleasant to shoot for extended sessions. The stock design reflects early 20th century military ergonomics, long length of pull, straight comb, and a balance point that settles naturally into the shoulder, contributing to steady offhand shooting. Fit and finish are where the Model 1909 quietly embarrasses many modern budget rifles, with deep bluing, crisp machining, and wood stocks that were shaped rather than rushed through production. The trigger is a classic 2-stage military unit that breaks cleanly once the wall is reached, aiding precision without sacrificing safety. On the downside, the rifle is undeniably long and heavy by modern standards, pushing close to 9 pounds unloaded, which makes it less convenient for carrying over long distances and slower in tight spaces. Ammunition availability can also be a limitation depending on location, as Factory 7. 65x53 is less common than mainstream hunting calibers, though handloaders often consider this cartridge a hidden gem. In terms of real-world performance, many well-preserved examples are capable of shooting tight groups with surplus or modern ammo, often rivaling entry-level modern bolt-action rifles that cost far more. Current market prices typically range from the mid-700s to well over $1,200, depending on condition, matching numbers, and bore quality, reflecting a growing appreciation for what this rifle actually is. The Argentine Mauser model, 1909, is not flashy, modular, or lightweight, but it delivers something increasingly rare, a sense of mechanical confidence and precision that feels intentional, not optimized for cost. And it stands as a reminder that military rifles were once built to be refined tools, not disposable equipment. Turkish Mauser model, 1938, sits at number 10 because it represents one of the most honest value propositions in the surplus rifle world. A full-power military rifle built around one of the strongest bolt-action systems ever put into service. The M1938 is the result of Turkey standardizing thousands of Mauser rifles during the interwar period, rebuilding German, Czech, and earlier Ottoman actions into a single configuration. And while that history scares collectors due to mismatched serial numbers, it should excite shooters because at its core, this is a true large-ring Mauser 98 action with controlled round feed, a massive claw extractor, and locking strength that modern budget rifles still try to imitate. Most examples feature an overall length just over 48 inches, with a long 29-inch barrel, and that barrel length is not an accident, because it allows the rifle to squeeze maximum velocity and consistency out of the 8mm Mauser cartridge, turning surplus ammunition into a hard-hitting, flat-shooting load that still carries authority well past distances most people realistically shoot. Weight typically comes in around 9 pounds unloaded, which sounds heavy until you realize that mass is what keeps the rifle stable under recoil and gives it that planted, confidence-inspiring feel when you settle in behind the sights. The recoil is unapologetic, especially with full-power military loads, but it is straight back and predictable, and the rifle feels like it was designed to absorb punishment rather than complain about it. The sights are basic but functional, a simple rear notch and front post that reflect the rifle's purpose as a battle tool rather than a sporting arm. And while they won't win any awards for refinement, they are durable and hold zero even after decades of service. The stock is typically rough hardwood with thick dimensions, built to survive abuse, moisture, and temperature swings, rather than look good in a rack, and that utilitarian approach extends to the finish, which ranges from worn blue to heavy parkerizing depending on when and where the rifle was rebuilt. One of the major strengths of the M1938 is its durability, as these actions were designed to handle high pressures and adverse conditions, making them extremely forgiving with surplus ammunition. Though the same history means headspace should always be checked by a competent gunsmith before serious use. Accuracy varies by individual rifle, but good examples regularly produce respectable groups that rival modern entry-level hunting rifles, especially considering the age and iron sight setup. The downsides are obvious and honest, as the rifle is long, heavy, kicks hard, and lacks the smooth refinement or ergonomic features modern shooters are used to, and it is not friendly to optics without modification. But what you get in return is a rifle that feels mechanically overbuilt in the best possible way. A design that prioritizes strength and reliability above all else. Current market prices often hover under $400 depending on condition, making it one of the cheapest ways to own a true full-power Mauser 98 action. And when you compare that to the cost of modern rifles built to a budget, the Turkish Mauser model 1938 makes a compelling argument that honest steel and old-world engineering still deliver performance that money alone can't replace. Spanish FR8 stands out as one of the most practical and unfairly underestimated surplus carbines ever fielded. A rifle created during the 1950s, when Spain was transitioning away from traditional bolt-action service rifles and toward modern self-loading infantry weapons. Rather than discard thousands of serviceable Mauser actions, Spanish engineers rebuilt them into a compact training and service carbine that could replicate the handling, sight picture, and balance of newer rifles while preserving the brute reliability of the Mauser 98 system. Built on a large ring Mauser action with controlled round feed and a massive claw extractor, the FR8 was engineered to handle full-power 7.62 by 51 NATO ammunition without compromise. Overall length comes in just under 40 inches, with a short 18.5-inch barrel that radically changes how the rifle handles compared to long, front-heavy Mausers. That compact barrel makes the rifle fast to shoulder, easy to maneuver, and far more usable in confined environments, while still delivering effective velocity and terminal performance. One of the defining elements of the FR8 is its rear-rotating drum diopter sight, a system that allows rapid target acquisition and surprisingly precise shot placement, especially compared to the shallow V-notch sights common on most surplus rifles. This sighting setup encourages shooting with both eyes open and dramatically reduces the learning curve for iron sight accuracy at realistic distances. The front sight is well protected and robust, reinforcing the rifle's role as a hard-use tool rather than a delicate range piece. Beneath the barrel sits the distinctive tubular assembly that many assume is a gas system, but in reality, it houses the cleaning kit and doubles as a bayonet mounting point. An example of the Spanish emphasis on compact utility and simplified logistics. Unloaded weight hovers around 5 pounds, which helps tame recoil from the short barrel while keeping the rifle balanced between the hands, allowing faster follow-up shots than most full-length Mausers. In practical terms, many FR8 rifles are capable of consistent 2 to 3 MOA accuracy with surplus ammunition, a level of performance that rivals or exceeds many modern budget rifles right out of the box. The strengths of the FR8 are clear: extreme durability, excellent iron sights, compact handling, and a proven action that thrives on neglect. Its limitations are equally honest, including stout recoil, increased muzzle blast due to the short barrel, limited aftermarket support, and reliance on a fixed internal magazine rather than detachable magazines. Yet those trade-offs are exactly what keep the rifle focused and reliable. Today, with market prices commonly falling between $600 and $700 depending on condition and originality, the Spanish FR8 represents one of the most compelling values in surplus rifles. It offers a rare combination of historical relevance, practical shootability, and mechanical confidence, making it an ideal choice for shooters who care less about modern accessories and more about a rifle that does exactly what it was designed to do, every single time. Arisaka Type 99 sits at number 8 on this list, not because it is flashy or refined, but because it represents one of the greatest gaps between reputation and reality in military rifle history. For decades, the Type 99 was dismissed as crude, unsafe, or poorly made, largely due to late-war production shortcuts and misinformation repeated without context. In truth, when judged on its core mechanical design, this rifle is one of the strongest and most durable bolt-action service rifles ever fielded. Japan adopted the Type 99 in the late 1930s, after combat experience showed that the earlier 6.5 caliber cartridge lacked stopping power, leading to the development of the 7.7 by 58 cartridge, a full-power round comparable in ballistic performance to other World War II service cartridges. Out of its roughly 5-inch barrel, the cartridge delivers strong energy, reliable penetration, and effective range well beyond typical infantry distances. The rifle itself measures just over 44 inches in overall length and weighs between 8.5 and 9 pounds unloaded, a combination that balances well and helps tame recoil despite the cartridge's power. At the heart of the Type 99 is an exceptionally overbuilt bolt action with dual front locking lugs, a recessed bolt face, and massive steel dimensions that give it an enormous margin of safety. Historical destructive testing demonstrated that the action could tolerate pressures that caused other famous designs to fail catastrophically, and that strength remains a major advantage for modern shooters using commercial ammunition. One of the most overlooked features is the chrome-lined bore, a decision made to combat corrosion in jungle environments, and one that pays dividends today. While many rifles from the same era suffer from dark, pitted bores after decades of corrosive ammunition, Type 99 barrels are often bright with sharp rifling, giving them a real accuracy advantage over their contemporaries. The sighting system is rugged and combat-oriented, with a protected front post and a rear ladder sight graduated for long-range fire. Early war rifles include folding anti-aircraft sight wings, a feature that was largely impractical in real combat but perfectly illustrates Japan's tendency to over-engineer rather than simplify. From a modern shooter's perspective, the Type 99's strengths are durability, bore longevity, and mechanical safety, while its weaknesses include a heavy, somewhat gritty trigger, a bolt throw that can feel stiff compared to Mauser pattern rifles, and limited ammunition availability. Ergonomics are straightforward and utilitarian, with a straight stock that transmits recoil directly into the shoulder, but recoil remains manageable and predictable due to the rifle's weight. Today, shooter-grade examples typically fall in the $400 to $700 range depending on condition, originality, and markings, making it one of the few World War II rifles where historical significance, mechanical strength, and practical shootability still intersect at a reasonable price. The Arisaka Type 99 is not elegant, and it does not try to be comfortable or modern, but it was built to survive extreme conditions, poor maintenance, and hard use. And decades later, it continues to do exactly that, while quietly outperforming expectations every time it's taken to the range. MAS-36 is a rifle that challenges almost every modern expectation the moment you pick it up, and the longer you shoot it, the more its design philosophy reveals itself. Developed by France in the mid-1930s with a clear understanding that another major war was inevitable, the MAS-36 was never intended to be elegant, comfortable, or impressive on a showroom wall. It was designed to be fast to manufacture, brutally reliable, and effective in the hands of soldiers who might receive limited training under terrible conditions. The overall length comes in at roughly 40 inches, with a 22.6-inch barrel that provides a strong balance between maneuverability and ballistic performance, while the unloaded weight sits around 8.4 pounds, giving the rifle a planted, stable feel when firing. That weight works in your favor, helping manage recoil and keep sights on target during rapid cycling. The most immediately noticeable feature is the forward-angled bolt handle, which looks wrong until you run it hard and realize how efficient it is. By positioning the bolt handle closer to the trigger hand, the MAS-36 allows extremely fast follow-up shots without forcing the shooter to break grip or shift position, making it one of the quickest bolt-action service rifles of its era in practiced hands. Chambered in 7.5 by 54 French, the rifle offers ballistics comparable to later full-power cartridges, with a flat trajectory, solid energy, and recoil that is firm but controllable, especially given the rifle's weight and stock geometry. The sighting system is another area where the MAS-36 quietly outperforms many of its contemporaries, using a robust rear aperture sight that provides a clear sight picture and faster target acquisition than traditional V-notch designs, making accurate shooting with iron sights far more intuitive for modern shooters. Mechanically, the rifle embraces simplicity to an almost stubborn degree. It has fewer small parts than most Mauser-based designs and famously lacks a manual safety, reflecting French doctrine that prioritized carrying with an empty chamber and eliminating unnecessary failure points. The two-piece stock and slab-sided receiver may look crude, but they are incredibly strong and resistant to warping or damage in harsh environments. One of the most distinctive features is the spike bayonet stored directly inside the forend, a clever solution that ensures the bayonet is always present, protected, and instantly deployable without adding external bulk. On the downside, the trigger is functional rather than refined. Ergonomics can feel awkward to shooters raised on modern rifles, and original military ammunition is less common than mainstream calibers. However, accuracy often surprises people, with many examples capable of 2 MOA or better using quality surplus or modern loads. Performance that stands shoulder to shoulder with many modern budget bolt-action rifles. Today, shooter-grade MAS 36 rifles typically sell in the $500 to $900 range depending on condition, bore quality, and matching parts, making them an appealing option for shooters who value durability and history over modern aesthetics. The MAS 36 is not a rifle that tries to impress you immediately. It earns respect over time by doing exactly what it was built to do, working reliably, cycling quickly, and delivering consistent hits long after flashier designs have been forgotten. At number 6 is the SKS Type 56, a rifle that has built its reputation not through hype or refinement, but through an almost stubborn refusal to stop working. This Chinese-produced semi-automatic carbine was engineered around the 7.62 by 39 cartridge and uses a short-stroke gas piston paired with a tilting bolt. A brutally simple operating system chosen specifically to keep the rifle running in dirt, mud, heat, and neglect. Overall length comes in at roughly 40 inches, with a barrel just over 20 inches, giving it a balanced profile that sits between a full-length infantry rifle and a compact carbine. Unloaded weight is usually around 8.5 to 9 pounds, and that weight is not accidental. The solid steel receiver, thick barrel, and robust internal components soak up recoil and create a shooting experience that feels steady and predictable, rather than sharp or snappy. One of the defining features of the SKS Type 56 is its fixed 10-round internal magazine fed by stripper clips, a design that eliminates an entire category of problems associated with detachable magazines. There are no mags to lose, crack, dent, or fail to feed. As long as ammunition and clips are available, the rifle stays in the fight. This also makes reloads surprisingly fast with practice, especially compared to many budget bolt-action rifles. The iron sights are utilitarian but effective, featuring a hooded front post and a rear tangent sight graduated to distances that reflect military doctrine rather than modern range realities. Many Type 56 rifles also retain the iconic folding spike bayonet mounted under the barrel, which adds forward weight and reinforces the rifle's original role as a complete infantry weapon, rather than a modular platform. Mechanically, the SKS is intentionally overbuilt, with loose tolerances that allow it to function when filthy or dry, which explains why it gained such a strong reputation in harsh environments. This same philosophy creates its downsides. Triggers are usually heavy and inconsistent. The stock geometry feels dated to shooters accustomed to modern ergonomics, and mounting optics is awkward at best, often compromising reliability or balance. Accuracy typically falls in the 3 to 4 MOA range with surplus ammunition, though well-maintained examples can do better. And consistency shot to shot is often more impressive than raw group size suggests. In today's market, prices commonly sit in the low to mid-500s depending on condition and markings, placing the SKS in direct competition with entry-level modern rifles that may offer better ergonomics and easier customization. What those rifles rarely match is the SKS's sheer indifference to abuse. It does not demand careful maintenance, premium ammunition, or delicate handling. It was built to be issued, dropped, dragged, and fired by soldiers with minimal training, and that intent still defines how it performs today. The SKS Type 56 is not refined, not lightweight, and not fashionable, but it embodies a kind of reliability that modern rifles often promise and rarely deliver. It is ready when needed, functional when mistreated, and brutally honest about what matters most in a fighting rifle. Swiss K11 Carbine is a straight pull-bolt action rifle that perfectly reflects how seriously Switzerland treated marksmanship and national defense. And it was never meant to be flashy or innovative for its own sake, only effective and repeatable in the hands of ordinary citizens trained to shoot well. Designed in 1911 as a shortened and more maneuverable version of earlier Schmidt-Rubin rifles, the K11 was built around the 7.5x55 Swiss cartridge, specifically GP11 service ammunition, which remains one of the most consistent and accurate military loads ever issued. The rifle uses the classic straight pull system that allows the shooter to cycle the bolt by pulling it directly to the rear and pushing it forward, eliminating the need to rotate the bolt handle and keeping the rifle on target through the entire firing sequence. In practical use, this translates to extremely fast follow-up shots and a smooth shooting rhythm that feels closer to a semi-automatic rifle than a traditional bolt gun. Overall length measures roughly 43.7 inches, with a 23.3-inch barrel, which is shorter than most full-length service rifles of its era, while still preserving excellent velocity and ballistic efficiency. Unloaded weight is typically between 8.5 and 7 pounds, giving the rifle enough mass to stay stable during recoil without feeling cumbersome or tiring during extended shooting sessions. The rear locking action design results in a longer receiver compared to the later K31, but this also contributes to a slightly lighter and more balanced feel, making the K11 surprisingly quick to shoulder and easy to handle. The stock geometry is classic Swiss, straight and functional, offering a natural cheek weld and consistent eye alignment with the finely graduated iron sights. The trigger is a clean two-stage unit that breaks predictably, encouraging disciplined trigger control rather than masking bad fundamentals. Accuracy is where the K11 truly stands out, as many rifles routinely produce 1.5 MOA or better with surplus ammunition, a level of performance that still challenges modern budget rifles. These rifles were not rushed wartime products, but carefully maintained service arms, often stored for decades in Swiss homes as part of mandatory militia service, which explains why bore condition and mechanical integrity are frequently excellent even today. The main compromises are limited compatibility with modern optics and accessories, and the rear locking action which, while slightly less robust than the K31, remains perfectly safe and durable with correct ammunition. Current market prices generally fall between $450 and $600, depending on condition, making the Swiss K11 Carbine one of the most overlooked values in surplus rifles. It is not forgiving, not modular, and not trendy, but for shooters who appreciate speed, precision, and honest mechanical design, the K11 remains a quiet reminder that accuracy was once considered a basic requirement rather than a premium feature. Yugoslav Mauser M48 comes in at number 4, and it earns that spot by being the final, fully realized expression of the Mauser bolt-action philosophy before the world moved on. Produced by Zastava in the early Cold War era, the M48 was not rushed, lightened, or cheapened. It was built as a serious service rifle meant to fire full-power ammunition for decades without complaint. Chambered in 8mm Mauser, it uses an intermediate-length Mauser 98 action that is slightly shorter and stiffer than the German K98, giving it a tighter feel during cycling and a bit more consistency shot to shot. Overall length sits just under 44 inches with a barrel length around 23.4 inches, a near-perfect balance point for a full-size battle rifle, and unloaded weight lands roughly in the 8 and 6 to 9 pound range, which sounds heavy on paper, but becomes a major advantage once you touch off real 8mm loads. That mass soaks up recoil, keeps the rifle planted, and makes follow-up shots more controlled than lighter modern rifles firing comparable cartridges. The action itself is classic Mauser, controlled round feed, massive claw extractor, dual front locking lugs with a safety lug, and legendary reliability even when dirty or abused. Fit and finish on most M48 rifles is noticeably better than late-war German production, with deep bluing, solid machining, and thick hardwood stocks that were designed to survive harsh Balkan winters and rough field use. The iron sights are traditional but effective, with a protected front post and a tangent rear sight graduated for distance. And when the bore is good, accuracy routinely surprises shooters who expect brute force instead of precision. With surplus or modern commercial loads, many M48 rifles are capable of solid 2 MOA performance or better, which puts them squarely in competition with modern budget bolt guns that rely on optics to achieve the same results. The downside is obvious. Recoil is stout. Length and weight make it less handy than modern lightweight rifles, and 8mm ammunition is not as cheap or common as it once was. But the upside is confidence. This rifle was designed to fire heavy 198 grain military loads all day without loosening, cracking, or losing zero. It is steel and wood in the most literal sense, with no shortcuts and no concessions to comfort trends. Even more impressive is the fact that these rifles did not retire quietly. They saw real combat use decades after production during the Balkan conflicts of the 1990s, proving that the design was not just durable, but relevant long after its supposed expiration date. On today's market, shooter-grade M48 rifles commonly sit around the mid-$500 range depending on condition, matching numbers, and bore quality, which makes them one of the best values in full-power bolt-action rifles available. Compared to a modern plastic stock hunting rifle, the M48 feels heavier, rougher, and more serious, but it also feels unbreakable, and that feeling is earned. Version 24 comes in at number 3 on this list, and it deserves that spot because it represents one of the clearest examples of a military rifle built with zero compromise between function, durability, and pride in manufacturing. Developed in the early 1920s and produced primarily by Československa Zbrojovka in Brno, the Versus 24 is a Mauser pattern bolt-action rifle chambered in 7.92 by 57, a full-power cartridge that defined European battle rifles for decades. In terms of proportions, it sits at roughly 43.7 inches in overall length, with a 23.2 3-inch barrel, a 5-round internal magazine loaded via stripper clips, and an unloaded weight that usually falls between 8.6 and 9 pounds, depending on stock wood and production run. Those dimensions matter because they place the VZ-24 right in the sweet spot between long infantry rifles and shorter carbines, giving it excellent balance while still delivering strong muzzle velocity and consistent external ballistics. At the core of the rifle is the large ring Mauser 98 action, featuring controlled round feed, dual front locking lugs, a rear safety lug, and the massive claw extractor that grips the cartridge from the moment it leaves the magazine until it exits the chamber. This design isn't just strong, it's forgiving under adverse conditions. And that's a big reason why the VZ-24 saw service on nearly every continent, often in the hands of multiple armies over its lifetime. Machining quality is where this rifle really separates itself from many other surplus options. The bolt travel is smooth, the receiver rails are cleanly cut, and lockup feels solid and repeatable, which translates directly into accuracy. With a good bore, many VZ-24 rifles will shoot one. 5-2 MOA with surplus ammunition and tighten up even further with quality commercial loads, putting them squarely in competition with modern entry-level bolt guns. The iron sights are classic and functional, with a protected front post and a tangent rear sight graduated for distance, designed for soldiers expected to make real hits without optics or electronic assistance. Ergonomically, the rifle shoulders naturally, the balance point sits comfortably between the hands, and the bolt throw encourages a smooth, deliberate shooting rhythm rather than rushed manipulation. On the downside, recoil is firm, especially with heavy ball loads. The rifle is longer and heavier than most modern hunting rifles, and mounting optics requires permanent modification that many owners prefer to avoid. Ammunition availability can fluctuate, and corrosive surplus demands disciplined cleaning, but those are trade-offs rather than flaws. What you get in return is a rifle built almost entirely from steel and wood, designed to last generations, and engineered to perform consistently rather than impress on paper. Today, prices typically range from around $450 to $750, depending on condition, matching numbers, and markings, which makes the VZ24 one of the strongest value picks in the surplus world. It isn't legendary because of marketing or mythology. It earned its reputation by setting a standard that modern bolt-action rifles are still quietly trying to live up to. Lee-Enfield No.4 Mk I is the rifle that demonstrates, without exaggeration, that speed in a bolt action was already a solved problem long before modern rifles tried to reinvent it. Developed as the mature evolution of the Lee-Enfield system, the No.4 Mk I was engineered around rapid, repeatable fire rather than slow, deliberate shooting, and that philosophy is obvious the moment you handle it. The rear-locking bolt design allows a shorter, smoother bolt throw than most front-locking actions, and when combined with the famously slick camming surfaces, it encourages aggressive cycling without lifting the head or breaking cheek weld. This is why trained shooters can maintain a steady cadence that feels almost semi-auto in rhythm. The rifle measures approximately 44.5 inches in overall length with a 25.2-inch barrel, striking a balance between velocity, stability, and handling, while its unloaded weight of roughly 9 pounds gives it enough mass to tame recoil and keep the sights flat through rapid strings of fire. Chambered in .303 British, the rifle feeds from a genuine 10-round detachable magazine, a real advantage over the 5-round internal magazines common to most bolt actions of the era. While doctrine emphasized reloading via stripper clips rather than swapping magazines, the extra capacity allows longer engagement cycles and smoother pacing. One of the defining strengths of the No.4 Mk I is its sighting system, featuring a robust rear aperture paired with a protected front post, offering a clear sight picture that dramatically improves target acquisition and practical accuracy compared to older notch and post designs. The long sight radius and well-regulated Battle Zero make this rifle forgiving, especially for shooters who may struggle with traditional iron sights. The 2-stage trigger is not light or refined by modern match standards, but it is consistent, predictable, and well-suited to rapid fire under stress, which aligns perfectly with the rifle's intended role. From a durability standpoint, the No.4 Mk I was built for mass wartime production, meaning exterior finish can range from crude to excellent depending on manufacturer and year. But mechanically, these rifles are extremely robust and tolerant of dirt, moisture, and hard use. The downside today is ammunition availability and cost compared to modern calibers, and the length and weight may feel excessive to shooters accustomed to lightweight hunting rifles. But those same characteristics are exactly what make the rifle controllable and confidence-inspiring on the range. In terms of accuracy, many service-grade examples are still capable of grouping on par with modern budget bolt guns, especially within realistic engagement distances. Current market prices vary widely, with shooter-grade rifles commonly appearing around $600 to $800, while cleaner or historically desirable examples climb well past $1,000. Yet even at the higher end, the performance delivered still feels justified. The Lee-Enfield No.4 Mk I does not rely on nostalgia or reputation to earn its place, because once you experience how fast, balanced, and intuitive it is to shoot, it becomes clear that this rifle was not merely good for its time. It remains competitive by design, and it sets a standard for practical bolt action speed that many modern rifles still fail to meet. Swiss K11 earns the #1 position because it shows what happens when a country designs a service rifle around marksmanship standards instead of accounting spreadsheets. Adopted in the early 1930s, the K31 is a straight-pull bolt-action rifle chambered in 7.5 by 55 Swiss, a cartridge engineered from the start for consistency at distance rather than raw economy. The rifle measures roughly 43.6 inches overall with a 25 in a 6-inch barrel, a length that strikes a near-perfect balance between velocity, stability, and handling. The straight-pull action is the heart of the design, allowing the shooter to cycle the bolt directly rearward and forward without lifting or rotating the handle, which keeps the rifle on target and dramatically reduces disruption between shots. Compared to earlier Schmidt-Rubin rifles, the K31 moved the locking lugs forward, closer to the chamber, shortening the receiver and increasing rigidity, which translates directly into better accuracy and a more solid feel under recoil. The trigger is clean and predictable for a military rifle, often breaking far better than what most modern budget rifles offer out of the box. Swiss K11 service ammunition was produced to standards closer to match ammunition than typical military ball, pushing a 174 grain projectile at around 2,600 feet per second, and the K31 was built specifically to exploit that level of consistency rather than tolerate wide variations. Even today, many K31 rifles will produce near MOA or better groups with surplus or modern equivalent loads, using iron sights that are finely machined and deliberately precise rather than fast or coarse. The sight picture rewards disciplined shooting, and the stock geometry naturally positions the shooter behind the rifle in a way that feels intuitive and repeatable. Weighing close to 9 pounds unloaded, the rifle has enough mass to absorb recoil and remain steady through the shot, which further contributes to its reputation for real-world accuracy. On the downside, the straight pull system is less forgiving of heavy fouling than a Mauser-style rotating bolt, and mounting modern optics usually requires aftermarket solutions that clash with the rifle's original intent. Ammunition availability is more limited and expensive than the common modern calibers, though quality is consistently high. Current market prices for shooter-grade examples generally fall between $650 and $1,250 depending on condition, bore quality, and matching components, with many rifles still showing signs of meticulous Swiss care, including unit tags hidden under the butt plate. The Swiss K31 is not simply the best surplus rifle on this list. It is proof that precision, durability, and intelligent engineering were already fully realized long before modern rifle marketing existed, and that truly great rifle design never stopped working. Modern rifles are lighter, more modular, and easier to accessorize, but that doesn't automatically make them better. What these rifles prove is that good design doesn't expire. Steel, wood, and disciplined engineering still deliver accuracy, reliability, and confidence that can't be faked by branding or features. If you own one of these rifles, you already understand why they still matter. If you don't, now you know why so many shooters quietly choose them over newer options. The past isn't outdated. It's still on the firing line, still punching tight groups, and still reminding us that performance always outlasts hype.